Hello and welcome to the Kuriaknits podcast. My name is Erin and I am so glad that you joined me here today. It has been a while and I apologize for that. I just got back from about 6 weeks in England and I had a very tumultuous but good time. It was a little bit crazy, but the craziness around the trip meant that it just wasn't very feasible for me to film. And to be honest, I didn't get a lot of knitting done, nor do I have a lot of acquisitions to show you, which I know is not the best way to start off a podcast. I do have some things to share, and since being back, I've already started knitting on something new. So I would love to share those things with you. And then at the end, I'm going to share a little bit about my trip. First, though, I would like to announce that the Sauble Tank, my first ever design, is now up on Ravelry for you to purchase. I will put some of my tester photos up on the screen so you can see the amazing, wonderful team of people who tested out this tank top and have just been absolutely incredible and generous to me. And yeah, so it's out on Ravelry now. I had run a 20% off on the opening weekend, and I will also be running it this weekend as a thank you to all of you who have been watching me and have cheered me on. So for this weekend, you can use the code Sauble Tank 20 to receive 20% off of your order, and I will put the details down below. I'm sorry that a video didn't come out to go with opening weekend. I have a bit of a cold. I had tried to make that work and I just couldn't make filming happen in my Airbnb. It was too noisy. Yeah, they were doing construction outside just all the time. And I just felt like I didn't have enough to show, enough to share. And I didn't want to put something out for you guys that I didn't find up to standard. So yes, the Sauble Tank is out if you are looking for some late summer knitting. I highly recommend it. I came back to Canada and it is sweltering, and the upstairs of my house doesn't receive very much of the air conditioning, so I am warm, and so I am absolutely diving into some late summer knitting, and I might even make a third Sauble Tank for myself. Some people are already making their second, and so I am just so overwhelmed, and I feel so blessed for the amazing reception that this tank has had. So if you're interested in making one for yourself, please feel free to grab it. And just so you know, also in fall, I am going to be making a vest version of it. That's basically the exact same pattern. So I will be sending the vest version out to anyone who purchases this pattern. It's just going to be an amendment basically just to the neckline and an option for a split hem on the bottom. And so I will be sending that out once I make those modifications and I'm able to make it myself. And so if you are also looking for a sweater vest with a little bit of oomph of the lace pattern, that will also be reaching your inbox in probably around September, October time. I plan to cast that on soon. So with that being said, I do have a finished object. I am not wearing it, one, because it's very warm, but two, because I had soaked it last night to block it, and I obviously did not leave enough time for it to dry before filming this. But I really did want to get it blocked because I wanted to check on the fit. That is the one thing about bringing things to Europe to knit with, is that I had absolutely no way of blocking things. And so I wanted to make sure that the sleeves were long enough on this. I wasn't quite sure. And so I actually brought it into the shower with me at one of my Airbnbs and just like stuck the arm out and just wet blocked the arm, and then I had to hang it to dry. So it seems like the arm is fine. And I actually did wear this in Europe because I went up to Scotland and it was actually quite cold while I was up there. And so I ended up wearing it and it wears beautifully. I am even more excited to wear it now that it's blocked. And it is the April cardigan. It is done finally. This is the one finished object I managed to do while abroad, and it is lovely. Let me put it on quickly. It is very wet and smells of wool, but this will give you an idea of what it's looking like anyway. Oh my gosh, it's gross. Oh yeah, the sleeves are actually looking amazing. So this is what it looks like. It has some really fun shoulder detailing here, and yeah, I made it a little bit cropped. It's less cropped than I thought it was going to be. It grew a lot in the blocking, guys. But I'm actually really thrilled about that. The arms were fitting quite close to skin, and I was a little bit concerned that I had ended up knitting a size too small, which was strange because I had sized up for this to make sure that I had some generous ease on it, and I had also went down a size while in Europe. So I'm like, oh gosh, if it's too small for me now and I happen to gain back this weight, like there's no hope for me. But it's actually fitting really, really nicely. And so I'm really excited to see how it blocks out. And so I knit this with Knitting for Olive Merino in Pure Silk. And I had picked up this yarn last year when I was in Copenhagen. And so this is a really special sweater to me because I spent a month of last summer in Copenhagen and a month of this summer in England, and now it just represents both of those trips so well. And so yeah, I ended up finishing this. I think I had just split for the arms when I left, and so I finished the body. The one modification that I did that I love is I did a double knit button band. So you can see the buttonholes here, and I winged it. I have patterns, specifically I'm thinking the Pippin cardigan, that have a double button band, and so I had absolutely no reason to not follow instructions on how to make a double knit band, but I thought that would be too much work, and I'm like, I couldn't possibly read right now. You know when you're just like read it out. I'm getting a PhD, guys, can you tell? My husband always makes fun of me for the language that I use and the words that I use, because I can't speak English, but I can apparently write it at a doctoral level. We're all just pretending. I just like was reading far too much and reading too much Latin day to day, and I was like, I can't possibly read something right now. I'm just gonna look at a lot of pictures of double knit button bands and squint at them for a long time, and I'll figure it out. And by golly, I did. So I'm really thrilled that I was able to figure this out. One thing that I think could have been a little bit better on the pickup is I constantly had to pull on first you pick up all along the button band, and then you use that when you're doing the double knitting. If you've done it before, you kind of get what I'm saying. So you cast on stitches, and then you do a double knit band, and then every row you pick up the stitch from here, and that's how you're attaching it as you go, or at least that's how I did it, and that's how I saw other people. Halfway through, I'm like, am I doing this right? That is how you do it, how I've most typically seen it done, and I had to constantly pull on this thread to keep it taut. And so I think that if I were to do it again, I would pick up the button band using a size smaller of a needle at least, and then up my size for the button band itself. I also ended up going down a size from what I knit stockinette in for the double knit button band, just because I was worried that I'd pick up too many stitches along the button band and then the button band would be too loose. And I think that was a good idea. I think it ended up working out really well, and the stitches are sitting pretty well in line with how they are here. The other concern that I had that doesn't seem to be a concern of everyone else, and I see why now, but I'm really considering putting a double knit button band on a cardigan that I'm designing right now that I'll show next. And my only gripe is that you knit the whole double knit button band all together, and so one side is knit opposite the other side. Do you see how the stitches here are going up and the stitches here are going down, or the other way around? And so I am just, sometimes I squint on it and it bothers me, and so other times, usually when I'm wearing it, I just don't care at all. And so let me know if that's something that bothers you, because the way to fix that is that you'd knit and pick up and just like bind it in the back. And I don't know if that's a better way to do it, or if I'm just adding extra complexity and an extra seam that doesn't need to be there. So I'm very interested to see how this wears and how it holds up. I'm assuming with the double knit button band it will hold up quite well, and hopefully this experiment was a good one. And a lot of people have done this with the April cardigan. The April cardigan originally comes with just a ribbed button band, but because it's so similar to PetiteKnits by PetiteKnit, PetiteKnit's, I think, champagne cardigan, which comes with a double knit button band. A lot of people have just mended the pattern to use that double knit button band. I don't own that pattern, so I didn't use that one in particular, but I really liked the look, and I've been wanting to try out a double knit button band for a long time. I will say it took forever, like so much longer than a regular button band. Wow, I was really concerned it was not going to be worth it because it took days. And granted, I was not knitting as much in a day as I usually would, but it took forever. It felt like I was knitting that button band for eons. Like, it was a lot. And so I would say that a double knit button band is definitely a commitment, and I think that you need to make the decision for your cardigan and what you want to decide if you want to spend the time doing it, because is it worth, does it look so much better that it's worth the days extra, I would say 4 days worth of knitting? I don't know. Maybe. I think it's going to be a cardigan by cardigan basis, and in my cardigan I might even provide details on how to do both. I don't know. I've been kind of going back and forth on a few things, a few design elements on it, and so this might be one where I just give up and say, do whatever you want. Here's some options for some button bands. For buttons, give me a second. Now for buttons, I was thinking, I picked these up at a garage sale right before I left. I was thinking maybe these guys. I'm not usually one for pink, but I think that that might go really nicely. So I haven't obviously added the buttons yet because I did not bring buttons with me to England, so I've just been wearing it open. And I think that might be really pretty, a really nice touch. I do also have these shell ones, but looking at them, I think they're both too yellow and too big. So the other option would be just some regular white shell buttons. I think I just need to decide whether I want a statement button on this. I might lie them out and put a poll up on my Instagram because I'm just not quite sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to wait till that's dry before making any decisions because it smells of wool in here. It's very, very damp, very wet. Okay, let's move on to the next cardigan. Yeah, I was just knitting on cardigans the whole time I was there basically, which was fine. And it's good because cardigans is what I desperately need in my wardrobe, and so I'm feeling a little bit cardiganed out just because they're knit flat for so much of the time, and I'm kind of jonesing for some stuff in the round, and that is reflected in what I cast on, but I know that it's incredibly useful and I love the final product. And it's not that I dislike knitting on them, it's just that stockinette flat can get a little tiring, which is why I'm not knitting this in stockinette flat. I am knitting this in broken rope flat. It's the lavender cardigan. I have put a name to this. I'm calling it my Shrike Cardigan. And you may be thinking, Shrike, like the bird. No, like the Hosier song, obviously. He can be the poetic nice one, and I will just steal his ideas because he is, I saw him in London, guys. I cried. It was absolutely incredible. If you don't know, he is my favorite artist of this millennium. Paul McCartney is always my number one. But Hosier is my number one of today, of this moment. And his new album is coming out in 2 weeks, and every single song on it that has come out has been incredible. I think this is going to be his best album yet, and that's saying something because his first 2 albums are some of the best albums ever. Are they in my top 10? I don't know if they'll be in my top 10. They'd be in my top 10 of the 2000s for sure. But I'm a big fan of 60s and 70s rock, so I don't know where you stand in that, but just unbelievable. He's one of my favorite people coming out with music today. And so when I was knitting this cardigan, I was really getting back into music, and I'm gonna talk about that in a knit and chat that I have coming up about the ways in which this trip has impacted me. But one of the things that has changed greatly in my life is that I have been replacing a lot of what I listen to, and I've been moving from listening to a lot of podcasts instead listening to a lot of music, and Hosier was large on that list. And so I was listening to him a lot while knitting on this. And so I decided to name it the Shrike Cardigan. And Shrike is a beautiful song off of his second album, and I highly recommend you listen to it, but I just thought it would be perfect for this design. Now this just got out of a flight where I was knitting on the flight, so it's a little bit wrinkly, but it is in a broken rib. It is a drop shoulder cardigan with some fun detailing on the back. Looks like that. And so you knit the back panel flat, and then you pick up the fronts, knit those down to a shallow V, and then do the body. So I'm just on the body part right now. I'm maybe halfway done the body. I'll show you kind of what it's looking like. I think it's looking so good. And so yeah, this is kind of what we're working with. This is where the V is going to go to. And obviously when you put a button band on, it's going to fill this in a lot more. And I am so in love with it. I cannot wait to have it and to wear it. Yeah, so the few things that I'm trying to figure out with this design is that, I mean, the hard part is done. I've designed the yoke, which is always the hardest part, the most calculations. And so I'm pleased with that. There are a few design decisions that need to be made though. One of my favorite things about broken rib, and something that I don't think is taken advantage of very much, is that it lies flat without you asking it to. I know it looks like it's rolling right now, that's wrinkles, but it will just lie flat. So I actually don't need to put a ribbing on the ends. And I think that it's done so much that it looks proper when ribbing is put on the ends, kind of brings a cardigan together. But I also think that there's something so fun about just letting the cardigan end, just letting it be. And so I might experiment with not putting a ribbing on the bottom and just having the cardigan stop. And I've seen some, not in the knitwear world per se, but in kind of fast fashion. I like to go into stores sometimes. I don't buy a lot of fast fashion, but I like to go in and just see kind of what's trending, what people are buying in terms of knitwear. And I saw a sweater that did have ribbing on the bottom, but did not have the ribbing, the cuffed ribbing on the sleeve. It just tapered and then ended. And I actually thought that looked quite nice. So I might not put ribbing on the edges and instead just let the broken rib speak for itself and let it end. And the other thing that I'm thinking of is a double knit button band on this, just because I think a ribbed button band coming out might conflict and just take away from the broken rib of the cardigan a little bit. And so I think a double knit button band is what I'm going to go with. That's kind of why I wanted to do it on the April cardigan, just to see how I liked it. And I do like it. It's time consuming as heck, but I do like it. And so I think that's what's going to happen with this. I am knitting this in Ficolana Arvetta and Santa Scarrington Silk Mohair, and they are just a slightly different color from each other. This one's warmer, this one's cooler, and I just love the way that these two colors come together to make this cardigan. It's made it have such a beautiful dimension that I don't know if it's going to pick up on camera, but the two purples are just singing in harmony with each other, and I am just so obsessed with the way that this is looking. I do want to make another sample of this, so once I'm finished the body and one arm, I'm going to send out a tester call. I have decided to put it out. I really appreciated all of your feedback on the last episode. A lot of you were saying, providing me links to other broken rib cardigans, and some of them weren't actually broken rib, they were fisherman's rib, which is a pattern that I love. So thank you for sending those to me. I might make some of them because I love fisherman's rib, but I haven't found any broken rib cardigans that are exactly like this design. So I think I will put it out. There has been some interest in it. It's probably at this point not going to be till like an October, November release, just because I'm a little bit more behind from where I thought I'd be with some of my knitting projects, as you can imagine. So I'm gonna get that done, and then while we're doing the test, I plan to test it in a DK weight yarn. So if there's a DK weight yarn that you would like to see it in, please let me know. I'm planning to do kind of a DK weight without a mohair, and so I'm open for options, because among all of this, I don't actually think I have a sweaters quantity. I'm just like looking in the camera behind you guys. I don't actually think I have a sweaters quantity in a DK weight yarn without a mohair to pair with it. All of them are worsted, and so I was thinking maybe what I was hoping I would get in England actually is I really wanted to get another sweaters quantity of West Yorkshire Spinners fleece blue face Leicester DK. That name is really long. It takes me a moment. Or the Jacobs DK, and I could not find it. There's a store that I got West Yorkshire Spinners last year in, and they no longer stock it. And so I just couldn't find it anywhere, and I was not quick enough on the uptake to order it. And so I didn't bring home yarn for that use, which is what I was really hoping for, that I could at least get a sweaters quantity in that. Alas, it did not happen. That's okay. But it does mean that I'm in the market for a DK weight cardigan / sweaters quantity of yarn, and I don't have my heart set on anything yet. I kind of want to stray away from, I think I want it to be a little bit woolier, a little bit like think less Sandisgarn and think more West Yorkshire Spinners, or maybe even something local. The thing that I found with the designing that I find difficult is I thrift a lot of yarns, and a lot of my yarn collection is local yarn as well. And I really want to use a lot of it, but with making things, I want to be able to give yarns recommendations, and I can't recommend that you go to the local carpet spinner and pick up some of their carpet yarn to knit with. Because like these are DK weight quantities, and that orange I would love to make a cardigan out of. I think it would be a beautiful like thicker jacket, and it actually softens up beautifully, that carpet yarn. But I can't very well knit with it and then recommend that you get it, because how could you ever possibly do that? And so you have to be a little bit more conscious with the yarn choices that you're making. And so it's always nice when I can thrift some yarn that I know what it is, but I don't always know what yarn I'm thrifting, and so that's just something that I have to keep in mind. So I will use my beautiful thrifted yarns and my local yarns for more so my own knits, when I'm following people's designs. But I just don't want to be recommending yarn that no one has any chance of ever getting, because what's the point in that? So that's the Shrike Cardigan. I am really in love with it. I cannot wait to wear it. Unfortunately, it'll be kind of out of season color wise by the time it's done. We'll see. I think I've seen some things that say the lavender is going to be a fall color this year. So we shall see. I don't think it will for me, but I'm very excited to wear it. I feel like I start to get into those cool tones around like January, February, and I think I'll be wearing a lot at the beginning of 2024. So I'm hoping the next cardigan I make will be a little bit more fall appropriate, maybe like a brown, or oh, you know what would be beautiful is like a mustardy yellow. I think that would be a really cool color for a cardigan. I have this sweater that I have in that color, and I actually wear it quite a lot. And so I think that might be a really excellent color choice for a cardigan as well. Actually, this Jägerspun would be a really great yarn to do the cardigan in. This is the Jägerspun. It's actually their sport weight base. I got it while I was in the States at Webb's in Massachusetts, and I wonder if they ship to Canada, because I loved working with this yarn. It is worn so well. It's really lovely, and I would love to see one. I just knit their sport weight as a DK, and that was fine for me. So I would be willing to do that again, but I would also love to see if they have a DK weight base and try to use that. Maybe I might actually look into that. That's not a bad idea. Okay, I have one more knit to show you, and it's very early days. So the day I landed, actually, which was only 3 days ago, I got a message from EweKnit, and they are a Canadian-based company, and they said, hey, do you want to jump in on our Florencia Tee knit along, which I had actually been following because I really think that the t-shirt is beautiful. And they said, hey, we'll send you the pattern if you want to share it with your people. And so I said, yeah, I would love to do that actually. And so just so you know, I did receive this pattern for free, but the yarn I bought myself. And if you want to join in on this knit along, I have a 50% off coupon for the pattern itself in the comment section, not comments, in the description below. So I thought it would be kind of a win-win for both of us. If you want to jump in, you get 50% off. And I got the pattern that I had been wanting and considering buying anyway. So I am jumping in on this knit along a little bit late. I think it started earlier in July, but it goes until August 31st. I have only just started it. This is a t-shirt that's knit bottom up, and I have just started on the ribbing, and it's looking like this. Now, it's funny because I am not a purple person, and I had said as much when I started on the Shrike Cardigan and that whole purple cardigan fiasco, is I had a dream of a lavender cardigan, but I'm not like a purple person. But I had bought this yarn with hopes of pairing it with the Arvetta, and you can probably tell on the camera, they just do not go. It was harder to tell online. So this is Linen Quill by Pearl Soho, and I think the color Purple Haze. And I do think it's a really cool color. It's like a very gray blaze purple. I don't know. I was hoping bringing it closer would bring it. It's a little bit richer than it's showing up on camera. So it's making, I think, Purple Haze or Lavender Haze, whatever it is, I think is an accurate color for this. And yeah. So the samples that they show in this cardigan are like pinky shades. And I do have this pinky yarn here. That is a fingering weight base, and so I thought might be appropriate, but it's actually a bit of a thicker fingering. I've been holding on to that forever. I should probably knit with it eventually. And but it's thicker, and this calls for a thin fingering weight, which I thought that the Linen Quill would be a little bit more appropriate for. So yeah, I am just doing the ribbing. I'm almost done the ribbing. I think I'm gonna make it a little bit shorter than recommended. They recommend a whole, I think it's like 2.5 inches of ribbing at the bottom, and it just seems like a lot for a small torsoed gal. So I might end it around 2 inches and then start on the beautiful pattern. It's been a while since I've done something bottom up. Oh, maybe not that long. The Oolong Tank by Amy Sher that I tested was also bottom up. And so I actually find that when not for sweaters, I hate bottom up sweaters, but for tops, when I see something that's bottom up, I'm like, ooh, that's exciting. I can do that. I don't know why it's so different for tops and not sweaters. This t-shirt I think is lovely. The one thing that I'm hoping I'll be able to do is I want to give myself a little bit more of a generous neckline. I don't know, so the original is like a crew neck. And I don't know whether I want a V or just like a little bit more of a scoop, give myself a little bit more room there. So I'm hoping I can amend it in that way. And the other amendment that I did, so if you buy the pattern, you'll know that you start with the sleeves. They have a long sleeve option and a short sleeve option provided. And I don't know which one I want. I think a long sleeve would be nice to have a light sweater, but I don't know if I have the yarn for it. Based on the yardage, I don't think I do. But I figured I'd knit the whole body first and see where I'm at and then cast on the sleeves. And because it's bottom up and it's a raglan shape, it all kind of comes together at the end. You kind of are making like a cone, but from the bottom up, so you're decreasing and you collect the sleeves as you're going. And so I will have to do the sleeves before I finish the whole of the body. I can't like do the body and then add the sleeves. Or I guess I could, but it would mean I'd kind of have to go off on my own. So we shall see. I am just knitting the body right now. And it's in the round, which I said I was craving something in the round. It is in the round, so that is really nice. I was gonna say delightful, and the L came out first, and I was like, I don't know how to finish this word down. that's what that glitch of my brain was. So I'm actually knitting this on a needle size or two, I think 2 needle sizes smaller. They recommend a 3.25 for the ribbing and a 3.5 for the body, and I am going to be doing a 2.75 for the ribbing and a 3.25 for the body. I didn't gauge swatch. Whoopsies. I just kind of know my gauge with Linen Quill because I had just cast on my I'm doing like a Sauble Tee, a raglan that I'm just doing for myself. I just wanted a simple raglan. That's still ongoing. I haven't touched it, which is also in the round, but it's using the exact same needles, and I had the exact same gauge as this shirt recommended with those needles, and so I just knew that these needles would be perfect. And yeah, I'm really excited to get to the lace part. I love working lace. I think that this shirt provides just some enough interest and was just kind of what I needed. And the reason that I didn't decline and just like work on my Sauble Tee, which would be the rational thing to do, is because I just wanted to look at some color. I realized that other than this cardigan, everything else I'm knitting is a shade of white or beige, and I didn't do it intentionally. It just kind of ended up that way. And so I was like, you know what, if I can cast something on, trying to knit along, which I love, and look at something that's not beige, that would be really great for me. Even though everything is now beige and purple, I don't know, it's just like scratching that itch for me, I guess. But I am really jonesing to cast on something like orangey like that. And that's why I had brought yarn to start the Sauble sweater, and I didn't touch it at all. So I was just carting around a sweater's quantity of KFO merino and mohair with me the whole time I was away and did not touch it, which is embarrassing for a seasoned traveler, to be honest. It just felt like such a waste of my suitcase, and I was like, I can't believe I did this to myself. So anyways, let me show you the few acquisitions, and maybe I'll do it while sharing a little bit more about my trip. So I didn't buy very much yarn at all, and part of the reason of that was because the exchange rate of the Canadian dollar to the British pound is horrendous. It is 1 Canadian dollar to 1.75 British pounds right now, and I could not justify buying a lot of things. I would look up the price of simple yarns, which just last year when I was in England was cheaper to buy there, and it is no longer. And so I had to make some decisions about buying. I really just wanted to look for British wools in British quantities of yarn, and I could not find barely any. And so let me bring you in on my trip a little bit, and I'll kind of explain what my thinking was. So I left on July 1st, Canada Day, did a red-eye flight, landed on July 2nd, and that day I was feeling really, really sick. And I thought it was because I was getting off of my antidepressants. For health reasons, I had to get off of my antidepressants. I was on Prestique, and I'm going to do a knit and chat about mental health and getting off of getting off of antidepressants, because it has truly changed my life, and I really want to contribute to those on social media talking about the impacts of antidepressants and medication on women's health, because I think it's important, and I've watched a lot of those videos and I feel like I have something to contribute to that. So that's going to be my next video, is I'm going to do a knit and chat talking about mental health and antidepressants. But I thought I was sick because of that. Prestique is a really difficult medication to get off of, and a lot of people experience a lot of nausea, and I had gotten off of them a week before, but sometimes it takes a bit for those symptoms to kick in, and a little bit of it was that, but it turns out I had the stomach flu. It was really, really bad. I was going to a conference at Leeds. It's a conference that I had been to before. I'm familiar with Leeds. I was staying downtown. The plan was to walk onto campus every day. I was both moderating a panel and presenting, and it was day 1 and day 2 that each of those things were happening. And I was sicker than I remember being in a very long time. I got so dehydrated that I lost vision at one point. I went down 10 pounds in less than a week. And I ended up at a clinic where they ended up diagnosing me with the stomach flu and giving me prescription electrolytes to drink. So thank God for the NHS. They brought me into their clinic, didn't charge me a dime, and sent me on my way, and the medication they gave me was only 10 pounds. Like, I could not believe how generous they were with their hospital system. I was fully planning to pay. It's night and day to the experience that I had at the hospital in America. My understanding is that if you go to a hospital in the UK, you do have to pay as a non-resident, but if you go to a clinic, they will see you for free, which is really, really nice. Was the walk-in clinic a little sketch? Yes. But were they very generous with their time? Also yes, and very kind to me. And yeah, so that was horrific. I spent most of the time in bed. I missed out on a lot of engagements that I had to do. I managed to get through my talk. I do not think I did very well at all. I managed to get through moderating, and halfway through moderating the session is when my vision started going. So that was uncomfortable. I've since talked to people that I moderated for, they're friends of mine, and they said that they couldn't tell. So thank God for that. We took a group photo afterwards, and I can tell that I look horrendous, but apparently the makeup covered up a lot, so thank goodness for that. From the time of getting sick on the Saturday in which I left to when I felt recovered, it was a full week. I had a good 5 or 6 days where I could barely keep anything down, and I have never had a stomach flu last so long, and I've never felt pain in my stomach like that. Felt like I was eating myself from the inside out. And so I did not knit that week. I did not do anything that week except for walk to campus, lose my vision, and feel horrendous and then sleep. I was also staying in the Easy Hotel in downtown Leeds, which I don't necessarily recommend. I had to pay for it out of pocket, so I got a cheaper hotel, and it didn't have windows. And let me tell you, when you are stuck sick. And the reason I did that is because I didn't think I'd be spending much time in my hotel room at all, that I'd be leaving first thing in the morning and coming back after dark. So like, what does it matter? It matters if you get the stomach flu and have to spend a lot of your day in bed. You just become so disoriented. You don't know night from day. You can't tell what's happening. I'd go outside and I'd be like squinting into the sky. Like, it was really, really bad. There was no, like, I just got so disoriented from not having windows. I highly recommend, if you're gonna at least go to that hotel. The hotel was fine. Get the room with windows. Spend a little bit of money on yourself. I regretted it. I regretted it a lot. And it was just so sad because I actually really like Leeds. I know it has a bad rap, but I actually like downtown Leeds a lot. I like spending time there. I like their bar scene. My friends were all there and I just like couldn't see so many of them. And I was really sad about that. So then on the Friday, I had to make it down to Maidstone, where I was staying for most of my trip. And that train journey was a journey because all of the academics were heading down to London, and my train went through London to get to Maidstone, which is in Kent. Maybe I'll put up a map or something. It's about an hour outside of London, and I was there because that's where my main archive was. Let me tell you, Maidstone is not a touristy town, and I'm sorry if any of you live in Maidstone, it's not the nicest of places to live. I actually, strangely enough, by some like crazy coincidence, some academics that I know through my network were actually staying there one of the weeks that I was there as well, and she had said that it reminded her of Windsor, Ontario. So do with that what you will if you know either of those places. People of Maidstone are incredibly nice, but there is just like nothing to do there, like nothing. So I was planning to stay there for a good month, and to do archive work. If you don't know, I'm studying to get a PhD in history, and I do medieval history, and I'm studying the Cinque Ports, which are in Kent and East Sussex, and my main archive is in the capital of Kent, which is Maidstone. And so I was staying down the street from the archive, and I had like 100 documents to get through, photographs, and it's my first archive trip, and I thought that it would take me a long time to get all through that, and it only took me a week. And so I was in like, I'm stuck in Maidstone and I don't need to be here, which was a little bit frustrating. And so I decided to bite the bullet and book for 5 days in London and 5 days in Brighton, because I also needed to get to those archives. I thought I'd have to go on a different trip. I ended up getting almost everything I needed from every single archive in the UK done on this trip, which is why I decided to splurge. And so I had an Airbnb in Maidstone, and then I was paying for a hotel on top of that in London and in Brighton, which is annoying, but thankfully I had funding that basically all of that was covered because the Airbnb in Maidstone was so affordable. So that's one nice thing about going to Maidstone. It's affordable, but if you're planning to commute into London, it's heckin' expensive. The train to get into London was like £18 round trip, which like at the end of the day isn't that much. If you have to do it every day, it gets really expensive, especially with the exchange rate. I digress. So I did end up spending some time in London, and while I was there, I went to my favorite, or what I thought was my favorite store in London, Beautiful Knitters. This is not to disparage Beautiful Knitters. I do think that they are an excellent yarn store, and I think that they'd be doubly excellent if you lived in London and are a local. I went in there and they seemed to be having some kind of like knitting event, and so no one talked to me, which I thought was very strange. Like, they didn't even say hello, which I thought was a little bit strange. And then I was looking through their wools, and they do have a decent selection of English wools, but a lot of them are English dyers, and so they were extraordinarily expensive. From what I remember from last year, they did have that wall of more expensive yarns, but there was other things to counterbalance it. And this time it felt a lot like they were kind of becoming one with Loop, where just a lot of their yarns are at a very high price point. And so I was looking at their more expensive yarns and their hand-dyed yarns, and they are beautiful. But they were like £30 a skein, which would mean that a sweater's quantity, even if I went on the safe side, got like 3 skeins of fingering weight yarn, that's £90. It's like $150, if not like $160, and I just couldn't justify that. Like, that's just a lot, and like what I was looking for was more of a woolly wool, and they just didn't really have that as much. There might have been one option there, and I don't know, it didn't end up working out for me, and that was fine. I did end up getting and I did end up paying more than I think I would have here, but I thought I would cast on right away and I just didn't. Knitting for all of cotton merino. I've seen a lot of people working with this. I was actually hoping to get the pure silk in the black, but they were out. It seems to be out everywhere. It seems like it's a popular yarn, and I understand it. I love pure silk, and of course who wouldn't want a beautiful silk black garment? So that's something I want to get my hands on eventually. But I figured I have a plan for this. I really want to make a really open, really holy, like holy, not holy, like dress shirt style open t-shirt. So if you have any pattern recommendations for that, I haven't quite found what I'm looking for. I found a few with like eyelets, but I want it to be even more open, to have structured seams, but have a really open, boxy feel to it. So that's kind of my plan for this. I only got 3 skeins of it because I was spending a little bit more than I might have otherwise, but it's a lovely yarn. I don't know if it'll get used this year, but I think it's really good to have in my stash, and I am looking forward to eventually casting it on. I thought I might do a Sauble Tank with it, and that's kind of my backup because I do think a Sauble Tank in this would be lovely. I have used this once paired with their silk, and I liked using it a lot. I am interested to see how it holds up single. I will say that this thing is attracting hair and fluff like no other. So I'm hoping that once you wash it, it doesn't do that as much because I have a white dog. But you know what, if the final product is good, it'll be worth it. So that is all I got in London. That is the only yarn store I went to. I was staying halfway between downtown London and halfway between Richmond because the archive is at Kew, which is towards Richmond in Zone 3. It was the furthest out I had ever been, I think. That and then the Hosier concert was way out in Zone 3 on the other side. So I explored a lot more of London than I ever have this trip. I also went to the Lumineers concert. I got some really terrible news while I was also extremely sick at Leeds. It was one of the worst weeks of my life. I found out my grandfather had passed away, which was unexpected, and my mom said not to come home for the funeral, and so I was dealing with that while also like really feeling it with the sickness. And so I decided last minute to treat myself and buy Lumineers tickets, and I went to go see Rag and Bone Man as well. And I went the Saturday right after I had arrived in Maidstone. Let me just say that concerts in the UK are 10 times better. They give out water for free. I ended up getting the barrier by some miracle. I got there late and made it all the way up to the front. I couldn't believe it. And they gave me free water. Canada, what the fuck are you doing? Sorry, I get very upset over concerts. I go to a lot of them, and I am really angry with the state of concerts today, especially Ticketmaster. Don't even get me started. But they gave out free water. What? It was wild to me. Yeah, free water. People were so nice. I got tickets at face value. You aren't allowed to resell tickets for more than the asking price. Why don't we have that? So I got tickets the day before for the face value of the ticket. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I am moving to UK just for the concert scene, I guess. They put on an excellent show. It meant the world to me. It was like the first time I'd felt happy since arriving in the UK, and it was really the turning point of my trip. But yeah, I will always remember that concert for that reason. But that was way down south, like South London. So I saw more of London on this trip than I ever have before, which was really cool. I really loved seeing more areas of London because I've been to London so much now that I don't really do the touristy things. I go to just be in London and enjoy it. And it was really great to see some more areas of it. But I don't remember I was staying right out there, and then I thought, I really would love to go see Tribe Yarns because that's in Richmond, and I'm kind of towards Richmond. And the week that I was there was the week that they were closing. I had no idea. Tribe Yarns closed, and they're moving out to Scotland, and they're becoming, I think, just an online-only business. And so I miss seeing their last week just because I couldn't make my days work with the days that they were open that last week. So, for those of you that got to see it, it feels like Pearl Soho. It's like a relic of the past, their in-person store. It sounded really cool, but yeah, it just so happens that it didn't work out. So I was there for 5 days, and then I went down to Brighton, which is my favorite city in England. I love Brighton so much. I just love walking on the water, and it was amazing. I got to live out my like English period drama dreams. It was really cold and wet while I was there, and I went for this amazing like 5-kilometer walk along the beach, and then 5 kilometers back walking along the pebbles with like a cardigan and letting the wind rush in my face and just like letting the mist take me. And it was like very moody and beautiful and cathartic, and I just had the best time. So while I was there, I went to YAK, which is Young Avid Knitters or something, stands for something. It's their knitting store, and last year I had went there and gotten some Jacobs West Yorkshire Spinners Jacobs DK. They no longer stock your West Yorkshire spinners, which I was a little bit disappointed about. But the thing that bothered me the most is that I went in and they stocked almost all yarns from the continent and almost all the really pricey ones. Like they had Ulysses, they had Snefnug, and they were really expensive. Especially with the exchange rate. They had some Sandus yarn, but it was a little bit like random selection of Sandus yarn, and they didn't have a lot of sweaters quantities, a lot of stuff. And I remember really liking that yarn store last year when I went, and this year it just wasn't hitting the spot. And so I was like really wanting to get something, and I just couldn't figure out anything to get that would yield me more than a hat for like a reasonable price. And I just like, I have enough single skeins of things that I just really cannot justify buying things for hats, especially when it's mass produced. Like I will buy, for example, what I bought in Scotland, which I'll show you in a second, I'll buy a single skein of that, but I won't buy just random, I don't know. I just couldn't justify it. I left without getting anything. And then I went back to Maidstone for a bit, and then I took my vacation. I had tacked on a little bit vacation for myself at the end. I ended up going to Inverness, which was unbelievably incredible. It's stunning. I'll leave some photos. I did a walking tour of Skye, or a bus tour of Skye. The Isle of Skye has been on my bucket list for years, like since I was like 10 years old. I have wanted to go to Scotland so desperately and go to the Isle of Skye. I've been to Scotland. This is my 3rd time in Scotland, I think. It's my favorite place in the world. I'd move there in a heartbeat. I would love to live in Edinburgh. It's my favorite city in the world. I love it so much. But seeing Inverness is also stunning. And then the second day I did a tour of Loch Ness. I would say there's not a lot to do in Inverness, so I would use it as a stopping point to jump on some bus tours. I went with Rabbies for both of them, and I really like Rabbies for their tours. I've done their tours out of Edinburgh as well, and I highly recommend them. They're really good tours. I've never had a bad tour guide. Skye was amazing. We ended up getting a relatively sunny day, which is just unheard of, and I just felt so blessed. And while I was there, I was really hoping I can get some Highland wool, and they just didn't have any anywhere. They have a bunch of touristy shops in Inverness proper where they sell a lot of wool goods. So they have like a lot of tartans and wool scarves and wool sweaters and things that are hand knit with Scottish wool, but they don't actually sell the Scottish wool itself, which is fine. There was one store that was selling Jamieson and Smiths for £6.50 a skein. What? I had to look it up. I'm like, is this a special Jamieson's and Smith? No, it wasn't. It's like regular £3 a skein. They were selling it for more than double the regular price because it was on this strip. I was like, there's no way in hell. I cannot believe that they're getting away with that. I could not believe it. They had this big bucket. I thought, oh, maybe I'll get some here. I've never used it. Like, what a place to get it. Not for £6.50. Are you kidding me? It was it was wild. And then while I was in Portree, which is the biggest town on the Isle of Skye, they have a craft shop there. And so I dropped in because I saw that they stocked wool, and I was like, oh, maybe I can get some like Scottish wool here. And I had the most bizarre conversation with a woman. It was really funny. So I walk in, I'm looking at her wool, and it's all like patons, like acrylic patons yarn. And I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. And then at the back, she had hand knit wool sweaters knit with Scottish Highland wool. And I was like, oh, that's strange. Maybe she'll know where I can get some. And so I was like, hi, excuse me. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, do you know where I could buy some Highland wool? And she's like, oh, we don't have Highland wool. And I'm like, oh yeah, I realize, but like, where, do you know where one could get it? And she's like, well, Scotland doesn't make wool. What? What? And I was like, I mean, I've seen like Highland wool, like especially Shetland. And she's like, we're not in Shetland. And she was so mad. And I was like, I know. It's like, I just thought like, I just haven't found a shop that's like stocking any kind of Scottish wool. And I thought, like, I know that we're not in Shetland, but I thought maybe you just stock some Scottish wools. I'm so sorry for asking. And she was like, well, Scotland doesn't really make wool. Like, they make wool for carpets. And I'm like, then what are all the sweaters that say made out of 100% Scottish wool made out of? And she's like, oh, well, like, yeah, some people make wool. It's like, what is happening with this conversation? It was so strange. I just didn't understand. And maybe there's some context that I'm missing here that would make this interaction make a little bit more sense. Maybe she was saying, oh, like, there's just not a lot of wool for people to purchase, which is totally fine. Clearly there isn't. And so I was just kind of like, okay. And she's like, well, some like farms will have some hand spun that they sell and put in their shops. And I was like, oh, so like you stop on the side of the road to get your wool. And she's like, well, I don't. And I was like, I wanted to ask, like, where do you get your wool then? And like I just couldn't engage with this woman anymore. I think she was ticked off that I apparently thought we were in Shetland, which I did not. And so I just kind of thanked her for her time and left. And it was a very strange interaction. So if you're going to the Highlands and hoping to find wool, it is a bit of a challenge. I think you'd have a better time in either Edinburgh or Glasgow. Yeah. It was very strange. And like, I would have been fine if she had said like, oh, like, we just don't have any. That's fine. Don't tell me that Highland wool doesn't exist. I've used it. Like, I know it exists. It's all over the place. That's made out of Highland wool. That's made out of Highland wool. Like, if you just say, oh, it's usually exclusively for mass producers, that's fine. That's fine. Like, I didn't need, don't tell me there's no Scottish wool. It's a very strange thing to say. So anyway, after that interaction, I just thought we were SOL. But on the next day, when we were doing a tour, when I was on a tour of Loch Ness, which was also beautiful, we stopped at a little mom and pop shop, and she had some of her hand spun that she was selling. And so I picked up this skein of yarn, which was 24 pounds. So I did spend quite a bit on it. But it was from her own flock. She has an alpaca farm, and she just has alpacas and horses. And then she has this little shop where she sells some of the goods that they make on the farm. She has a coffee shop. I got a coffee there. She was lovely. She was amazing to talk to. She said that there is Highland wool, just not around here. And I was like, yeah, I figured. So I got this stunning skein. She had, they're all natural colors. She had black, white, and then variations of brown, but I just loved how you got two different tones of brown in this. It's really, really well spun, and it feels amazing. It feels just like Canadian alpaca, actually. It just has a lovely squish to it. So this is from the alpaca called Mercury. It's a 3-ply fine, and it's 110 meters. And so it's around a worsted weight, and I just thought it was stunning. I think I'm gonna make, I'm of two minds about this. I'm either going to make a hat, or I'm going to make an Italian knitter scarf. I'm not one for the little scarves, but I think it might make a nice twilly or something. So, and I've been wanting to make one for a while and can't figure out what I want to make it with. And this might be a decent option. I will say it is very hand spun, like there's some knots in it. But I just thought it was too beautiful to say no to. I spent a small fortune on it. It was 24 pounds. And I'm not going to convert that because it will hurt my heart. But it is a really special skein of yarn. It is the only skein of yarn I found in Scotland. And I'm very, very grateful to have. There's actually a lot of ends in here, guys. This might have been a mistake. Like, look. End. Is that an end too? We're just gonna hope for the best on this guy. She was super nice. I was super happy to support her business. Her and I chatted for a little while we were waiting for the group to come back from the lake. I had already seen that portion of the lake. We ended up stopping somewhere that we had already stopped on the way out to Isle of Skye the day before. And so I was just chatting with her, and we had a great conversation about wool and alpaca and farming in Scotland and about land erosion, and it was just fantastic. I think if I hadn't met her, I would have been very sad about the wool outlook of Scotland, but I'm renewed again, and I'd be very interested to do, I mean, I'd love to go out to the Shetland and Orkney Islands and do that tour one day, but I'd be very interested, if you've been to Shetland, is there more yarn around? Is there more wool around? Or is this just like a thing out there? I don't know. It was very I don't really know what to think. Like, that conversation at that moment has just made me like question everything. And so I want to do a lot more research about the wool industry in Scotland, because I understand that a lot of it would be sequestered to carpet yarn or for weaving. I mean, there's a lot of weaving out there, but don't tell me there's no wool in Scotland. It was a very bizarre comment to make. So anyway, that's all I brought back, was the knitting for Olive and then this beautiful alpaca. And yeah, I mean, when your dollar is so bad, that kind of does it. And then I came back from Inverness and flew right back here to Canada. So that was kind of my trip. I spent a lot more time talking about it than I thought I would, but hopefully you had your knitting with you and we're knitting along. But yeah, the trip was incredible, but I'm very happy to be home with my family, and I'm already looking forward to the next time I can be in Scotland, really. I love it. I mean, my dream would be to do a postdoc somewhere in Scotland, because it really just feels like home. It is the largest part of my ancestry. I am majority Scottish, around the 50% mark, and so I don't know, I never like buy into that stuff, but there's something about being in Scotland where I just feel like home. I can breathe out in Scotland. You can tell I have a bit of a cold. I came back with a bit of a cold, but I could barely tell that I had a cold there because the air is so clean and beautiful. Yeah, it was just absolutely lovely. So I hope that you guys have had an amazing month, amazing summer. Let me know what you got up to. Let me know what you're knitting on. You can check out the Sauble Tank in the description if you are interested in getting it. I would be forever grateful, and I would love to see the version that you end up making. And I will see you next week for a knit and chat, and then the week after for your regularly scheduled podcasting. Thanks again for sticking around. I really appreciate you, and I will see you next time. Bye!